I'm going to rescue this sewing machine that's behind me right here. I'm 70 years old and I've been dragging junk home since I've been 10, 12 years old, and I have fixed and repaired and restored a lot of different things. I've only once tackled something like this machine behind me, and I'm going to tackle it again, and I'm going to show you how I do that so that you too can look at projects like this. I'm going to show you how to rescue something like this, and the process that I'm going to go through is beneficial for anything that you approach that you want to repair or restore. So follow along as I give you the steps that I take when I restore or repair a piece of furniture or an old sewing machine like this, or a tool, or whatever it is. There are 3 basic steps that I follow, and those steps are sure to benefit you. My name's Marvin, Marv's Fixit Shop, and I fix junk. The first step that I take in any repairs or any type of restoration that I do is to evaluate and assess what needs to be fixed. On old buildings, we look it over and we try to determine if it actually can be fixed, and most times it can. Now on this sewing machine, it's the same process. We have to look it over and evaluate it. So the first step is evaluation. Evaluating the machine to see what kind of condition it is in and what we're going to have to get around to repair it. So let's take a look at this old machine. Let's start at the base. To get a better look at the base, I am going to pull the drawers out. I had them out once before, so I know they come out, and we've went through them in a previous video. You can find that video in the cards. There's a card up here that you can look at, that you can find a video where we looked at the contents of these drawers. So let's get all of them out and see what we have. Okay, looking this over, at least on the base, I see that this here's loose right here, so we're going to have to do something with that. The paint looks good, it's not too rusty. This still moves like it's supposed to. So the base, from a visual and a practical stance looks pretty good. So we're going to move on up. So let's look at the cabinet. Now in this cabinet, think the way I'm going to approach it, and I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to try to bring the life back on this old finish. And I'll explain that to you later on. And the last thing I want to check is just take a look at this head. I see that it's dropped down some. So I want to take, and I think I know why. And I'm not sure why this isn't. There we go. Yeah, this head is loose from the base. I can tell that by looking at it. So that's going to be an easy fix. So my initial evaluation on this old machine is it's in pretty decent shape yet. Now I won't know totally until we get to digging into some of these components. That brings me to the second step. And that's, how do I approach a project like this, or any project as far as that goes? What I do is I section projects off in this part, this part, this part, that part. In other words, I take little bites. And I realized a long time ago that you have to take small little bites on your project or you're going to really get discouraged on it and be overwhelmed. And I don't care if it's a big item like those two trucks over there, or if it's a small one like this sewing machine, small little bites. So take small bites and not a large bite. You don't want to choke. And that's the idea. So this particular machine, I'm going to divide it in 3 sections. We have the head up here, we have the body or the cabinet, and then we have the base. Where do you think we should start on this here restoration? I'll tell you where I normally start, and I start on the base. Like a building, the foundation, that's always the first area you go look at, but that's not really the first thing you do on a restoration project. And part of the evaluation comes in is to see how safe a structure is or whatever you're looking at to repair whatever. So the first step is evaluation, do some research, figure out what you want to have in the end and go from there. And the second step is to section it off in bite-sized pieces because you don't want to choke and trying to do the whole thing at once. I've done that. And furthermore, you can lose track of where things go. So even right now, a wise thing to do would be to take a few pictures, but I'm going to do the right thing and just start tearing this apart like any guy my age would, maybe. But so to get to the base of this, what do I have to do? Well, actually, I have to remove the head, remove the cabinet, and then the base is exposed. Normally, I would start from the ground up, but I can't here because I have to get these things out of the way. So let's get this head off to start with. You can see at the bottom here, there's a screw here, a screw there, and then one over there, and this one's missing. So this is going to be pretty simple. So all I'm going to do is remove those 3 screws. You see the head here, it's off. It fought me a little. There were a couple other nuts I had to take loose to get these hinges out, and I got those off just fine. They're going to need a little work done to them. They're actually pretty good shape for being as old as they are. Probably a lot better shape than I am, and I'm 70, and I know the thing's at least, I don't know, it could be 100 years old, 30 years, 3 decades older than me, maybe 4 or 5. I don't know for sure, but we'll find out hopefully. But there's the head, and for now we're just going to leave it set, and we're going to go see if we can't get the cabinet loose so we can start on this base over here. Looking over the cabinet, I see that there's something right here. It looks like a screw, a bolt right there of some kind, but I don't think those can come off until I actually lift the cabinet off. And to get the cabinet off, there's a screw here, a screw right here. There's 2 more under here and 2 over here. And I think I should be able to lift this right off. So let me get those screws turned out and we'll see if we can't lift this off. I got all but 2 screws out, one here and one over there, but I didn't have a screwdriver long enough. But I did. I want to show it to you. Right here is a screwdriver that a friend of mine gave me several years, probably 4 decades ago. He was an older guy. He had an auto mechanic shop here in town, and he stopped by my office one time, my construction office, and he handed me this screwdriver along with some other tools. And I didn't think I'd ever have a need for a straight, flat-headed screwdriver that long, but guess what? I think this will work just fine. Let's see. You get that up in there. Let's see if, look at that, turning right out. Well, Dub, your old screwdriver came in handy. That's what they called him. Not even sure what his name was. But I'll get the other one out and we'll lift this off of here. Let's see if this comes off now. I think it will. Yep, there she's coming. Okay, I'm going to set this to the side. As I think about this old sewing machine, I can't help but think about how life treats us sometimes the way this old machine was treated, neglected, left, put in storage. So when we as older adults, 70, even younger, once we start to get older, we start to question if we have any value yet. And in part, that's one of the reasons why I started my channel, is so I could demonstrate through these repairs and restorations that value is there, not only in this machine, but in the people that are going to take care of them. Each one of these old items that I work on has a history of some kind, just like this. This old machine dates back to my wife's grandma, Philippine. I don't know when she got the machine. I have no idea. But I know that her feet touched this pedal and many, many hours were spent sewing clothes for her family and take care of everything. And this was just one of the tools she had to do that with. And as individuals, sometimes we lose touch with people, and we lose touch with the equipment and the tools that they used. And so this is more to me than just an old sewing machine trying to put it back together to get it functional. It's part of our family history, and I actually want to sew on this thing, and I've never sewed in my life on anything like this. I did a little hand stitching, but when it comes to machines, I've never touched it. I don't know the first thing about sewing, but I hope to learn. And if you have something to share, I'd appreciate it. Give me some pointers, especially on how to set the head up with the bobbins, is that what you call them? And those little, what I call matchbox wheels, how they work and how you thread the machine. Now I know how this functions. And I know that this wheel here has a leather belt that goes up to the head. And that'll come later in another video, but other than that, I don't know a whole lot on how to make these things operable. I think I know how to make it operable, but I don't know how to use it. The details of it, I'm kind of looking at the big picture here. So what's the next thing we need to do with this base is simply just disassemble it, at least in part. And then we'll take it over to the sink, clean it up, and we may repaint it, we may not. My idea of restoration is different than a lot of people's ideas, and I'll share that with you someday. So let's dig right into this old machine. First thing I'm going to do is take these shelf brackets off. There's screws in the back side, and you can see this one's already loose. And they are different, so I'm going to bag and tag them. The ones to take the cabinets off were the same as the ones to take the head off, so those are pretty easy to understand. Let me get these off for you. I have them bagged. I always keep some Ziploc bags in my shop. I try to. Most time I don't use them, but in this I'm going to. I just marked this shelves, and I marked this cabinet and head, and put all the parts in there. And see, we'll just lay those to the side for right now because we don't need them. And then on these shelf brackets, I did notice that there's a difference. And that this one here on the bottom side has a little braces in here, and that tells me that that goes on the bottom, and this one here goes on the top, and it has grooves on each side, high spots. I don't know if that's visible from where you're looking, but and I don't think they're interchangeable. I was looking here trying to figure that out. It just doesn't look like that one side would go on another side, because you'd flip it upside down and those would be there. So it's going to be pretty easy when I go back to putting this together to figure out which set of shelves went where. Now I'm going to set these shelves to the side, and we're going to continue to disassemble this. What I would like to do is take the rod loose so that when I take the sides, these screws out, that will just come apart. And this is attached, and I don't want that to stay attached. So another little trick I want to share with you quickly is I had trouble getting a couple of those bolts loose, those machine bolts, this flat-headed screwdriver. Well, I could get it in there, but I didn't have enough strength to turn it. So when at my age, and with my arm strength the way it is, I grabbed me a little crescent wrench, and I put it right there in the flat spot of that screwdriver, and I use that. I push in and use that as leverage, and it'll break them right loose usually. Got to make sure you keep it in tight enough so that you don't round the slot off, where it doesn't jump out and around the slot. You get that slot rounded, then that causes some more issues that you really don't want to deal with. So just a little side trick. What you're looking at is the bottom of this rod right here, and you can see how that attaches, and it goes up and down, and it looks to me like there's a couple of nuts on each side of this that I should be able to turn out and just pull this rod out of there. If this is the right size, we'll see what happens. It is the right size. There again, you do not want to round that off. Yeah, that turned. Let's see if it comes out of there. Let's try it with this. Yep, come right out. Don't want to lose anything. Let's see if this comes out. That come right out. Now I wonder if I get the right tools, if that would bump out of there. We sure don't want to mess up those threads, so we'll put the nut back on there just in case. I'm not 100% sure if that'll come out or not. I'll get the right tool. When you're working on stuff like this, you want to use a softer metal. Now you'll see that this hammer is brass, and I picked it up at an online auction, and when I cleaned it up, man, was I surprised. Let's see if that pounds out. Did you see what I just did? Well, I'm going to have to see how good I am at fixing cast. Man, I hate that. But it happens. You know what? That looks like that was cracked. But regardless, I'm going to have to try to get it welded together. Evidently, that's not how you get that out of there. And I see now how you do get it out of there. I was looking at the wrong spot. We've got our work cut out in front of us now. There are times when you try to fix something, you break it. It's as simple as that. And I broke that pedal. And to say that that isn't discouraging would be an understatement or a lie. But I want to show you how I actually did get this rod off then and how it was set up. It was quite simple. Once I realized it, but it had these pins in each side that screwed in to the base that I was pounding on that goes into this, which gives it its movement. And the reason why it would have this oil hole right there so that these pins could function the way they're supposed to, and these were lock nuts. I did not know that. I do now. And to get the top off, it has a screw on it, or a bolt with a slot in it. You loosen this nut right here, and then that just turned out and it popped right off the ball. And then this is threaded on both sides of this, but I do not have to disassemble that. This one's got a pin in it. I guess they both have pins in it, but I don't have to disassemble all of that. What am I going to do? If I would do what a lot of people would do, is I just put this back together and say it's furniture art inside somebody's old house, maybe liquid metal, JB weld that thing back together, file it a little bit. But no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually see if I can't weld that cast back together. If I can't, I know someone who can, and I may just have to take it to them. You can see that I have all these parts laying out here on the table, and also you can see that the broken pedal, which I'm going to get repaired, I've got that figured out. I'm happy about that. I hope that the individual where I'm going to do this won't have any trouble doing it. He's a relative of mine, goes way back. He's an Amishman, and he has a blacksmith, and he does that kind of work, and he's good at it. If anyone can fix that, he can. So it came apart fairly decent from where you saw it last. There was a couple of tight screws, and I figured the assembly process out. And that was only because I had to deassemble it. I'm going to clean it up. I want to show you one part that I just took over to the sink and washed. And that will be my first step, is to just wash all these parts up and see what they look like. And hopefully it won't take a lot of paint to make them look decent, because I like preserving the integrity of the original finish. This part right here is the part that I took over and washed it up. It's still got a little dirt on it, but I'll tell you what, that cleaned up pretty nicely, didn't it? for a 100-year-old sewing machine. Now some of these parts here, like this right here, it'll take a little bit more because this rust will have to come and be cleaned up off of it. And then in these grooves right there, but for the most part, the finish on those are really nice too. So let's get this all cleaned up, and then if I have to do any painting, I will. I took this part over to my buffing wheel because it was coated with dirt and grime and everything else, but you can see that that turned out fairly decent. I probably will touch up the top of these with a little bit of paint, and I started to clean the pedal up too. It's turning out, but you can see that it's pitted pretty badly right here. So I'll have to do a little bit more work. I'm not going to go get it re-chromed. I'm pretty sure this was chromed at one time, but that's just part of the character of this old sewing machine. Change of plans on these, on this base. I'm going to go ahead and put stripper on all the parts, and I want to show you how I do that. I have my stripper here. Always lay visqueen down, some kind of plastic, and I go ahead and just coat it really good. The reason I decided to do this is I just can't clean all these little nooks and crannies on this metal good enough. I tried over there and I just wasn't satisfied with it, so I decided to just take it all off and start over. Okay, once I get it coated really good and heavy like this, what I like to do is take this plastic and just cover the whole thing up. Getting ahead of myself. I got to flip it and do the other side yet. This is a good stripper to lay on that head over there. The reason being is it's not as harsh as some strippers that people use. Fact is, it's not even harmful to your hands, so that's why I can do it without gloves. And there's no flammable material. There's nothing that it vapors or anything like that. And the reason I put the plastic on here is to keep it from drying out too quickly. Because stuff is kind of expensive and that just holds the moisture in. So that's how I do it. Now I'll get that other one done. We'll let these set. I've got those other pieces that I had up here already covered, rolled in plastic, but we'll let this set for a while, take it off, and since it's water soluble, I can wash it all off. It's environmentally safe, and we are ready to go. Well, good news. I hauled that part, that treadle, out to Christian's blacksmith, and he said he's fixed them before, and he'll give that one a shot. Sound real promising. He said he'd get with me when he gets it done. It's Monday morning, and one thing I learned a long time ago, at least in the last 7 years or so, 5 for sure, that when you get to be my age and it's Monday morning, you really need to get up with your feet hitting the floor and sit down and just take a breather and drink a cup of coffee. There's a time in my life I used to get up early in the morning on the Mondays and have to hop in my old truck and drive to whatever job we're working on, and I liked that at the time, but right now I can't even imagine all of you getting up and going to a job, especially if you're stuck in one that you really don't like. And when you get my age, you usually have the resources, but what happens is you no longer have the energy. So what I do is I just sit back and think about it a little bit, and that's what I'm going to do this morning. I'm working on this old sewing machine, if you have forgotten, in the 2 seconds it took to transition from last week to this week in this video. and I had left you with all my parts covered up with stripper. Well, I'm going to show you the results of that in just a moment, so hang on. But before I do, I've got to take care of some really important business. And that's finish my coffee. I hope you have one on me today. I don't have that coffee quite done. It was a little warm, so I'm letting it cool off. But what I want to do is show you what I've been working on. This set in my stripper like I showed you, and it sat there all weekend. And as you can see, it did soften it up, but it didn't. It is not taking it off. And I've run into that with this black paint, where what I call my super stripper just won't touch it. And in cases like that, I'm not going to go through and scrape all these little nooks and crannies. But in cases like this with this black paint, and it's only been with the black paint, I don't know what's in it, but it is strong. I'm going to let these parts set a little bit and let this re-solidify some so it's not quite as soft, but that is going to make a good base for the new paint. I could take this over to my wire wheel and it'd probably brush right off some of it. I may do that yet, but to get every little bit of it off, that's not going to happen in my shop. Fact is, knowing this now, I don't think I could put on a paint that is as strong as what this is. I could touch this up, put another coat over it, but the basic paint itself, no. I run into that, like I said, a couple of times in some of the restoration projects that I've done in the past. But it was on wood windows where they had that black base paint, and I don't know what it is. If you do, let me know in the comments. I'd sure like to know what that stuff is. I'm not an expert paint guy, but I've run into it. I did take this piece over to my wire wheel just to see how that paint would come off, and it softened it up so much it just about jumped off of this piece. Let's look how shiny that got. Yeah, there's a few little spots in the nooks and crannies, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that to all of them. That would take a lot of time. I may. This depends how I feel and if I get my coffee finished over there. We'll see. I like drinking it, at least in the mornings up to about noon. If I drink coffee in the afternoon, I have a tendency of not wanting to go to sleep. But I'm going to put a coat of primer on this, and I'm just going to use my Rust-Oleum rust-proofing primer that I've used in this shop many a times. Put a light coat on it and see what it looks like. I'll bring you back in to show you what it looks like after the primer dries. Here's the primer. It actually turned out really nice, as you can see. But I want to make it shiny, not dull like this, so I'm going to hang it back up and I'm going to put a coat or two of finish on it, and I'll show you that when I get it done. I'm just hanging this, spraying it with ordinary spray paint off the shelf. You can buy this any hardware, off Amazon, wherever you want to get it. Here's that part that I painted gloss black. It's turning out pretty good. It's just a little tacky yet, so we're going to let her sit there and dry. Yeah, by the way, never shake a can of paint while you take a sip of coffee. It doesn't end well. What's that got to do with what I'm saying? But I thought maybe you noticed that, so I thought I'd bring it up. But you can see that that's turning out pretty good. I hope you can see that. I'll stand back here so it focuses a little. But I think this will probably be the process that I go with the rest of these parts. Here's the parts, at least part of them, the two biggest pieces, and the most trouble that I'll have will be on these to get them cleaned up. One thing I do want to caution you about, and when we did the job that had the black paint on it, well, we did test that paint for lead, and part of the project did have lead. Wear the right safety stuff. I would recommend gloves if you do a lot of this, and I'd recommend also wearing some kind of a respirator or mask while you clean it up. But be careful if you start messing with stuff like this. It's a good idea to test it for lead. Will I ever get these parts all put back together? As I look at them, I'm thinking, wow, especially this right here. There's a lot of little parts right there. What have I gotten myself into? At the start of this video, I said that I break my restoration projects up into bite-sized pieces. And this particular one, I broke it up in 3 parts. I've got the base, I have the cabinet, and then I have the head. Well, I have to admit, I almost choked on this first bite, especially in breaking that treadle like I did, which I'm still waiting on. So I'm going to move on to the next segment of this video, and that will be stripping the cabinet. If you find value in videos like this, I would ask you to subscribe to my channel. If you like videos like this, check these 2 out here. Can it be fixed? It will be. Can you fix it? You're darn right you can. Until the next one.